Good afternoon, everyone. We should get started. So I would like to thank the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas, or as we lovingly refer to it as CPRIT, for the opportunity to have a discussion about the Multi-Investigator Research Awards program. So I'd like to welcome all of our participants who are here today in the auditorium. We also have many of our colleagues streaming in to watch this program, so I welcome all of you as well. So it's a great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Margaret Kripke, who is the Chief Scientific Officer, and Michael Brown, the Senior Program Manager for Research here, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Before I get started, I want to just say a few thank yous. First to MD Anderson for hosting this event. We wanted to have an opportunity to give some feedback about the MIRA process, and they kindly offered to provide a venue for us. And thanks to their AV people, we're able to have this much wider audience than just in this auditorium, which is also extremely helpful. On the Austin side, our IT team, Terry Simeon and Jason Romero, worked hard to help get this going and do the electronics. And I always have to thank Michael, who always makes things happen. This time he made all of this happen while I was on vacation, so I owe him a vote of thanks as well. So I have one other message to bring to you from Dr. Garcia, who's both our communications officer and also the head of our prevention program. She's in charge of our CPRIT conference, and she has asked me to remind people that the abstract deadline for the CPRIT meeting is Friday, and we encourage everyone to submit an abstract. You don't have to be a CPRIT grantee to either attend the meeting or to submit an abstract, and the abstract doesn't have to be on work supported by CPRIT. It can be on whatever it is that you're working on, as long as it's cancer research related. So I'll encourage you to dig out that abstract or write a new one and send it in on Friday. And also I want to encourage people to register for the meeting. It will be held November 9th and 10th. In Austin, Texas. It'll be back at the Renaissance Hotel near the Arboretum, and it should be a great meeting. It's an opportunity to just talk to people, to meet people, and we have a great program lined up for you, so I hope everybody will be able to join us for that. We have, I think, a number of people not only here but also listening in today, and I take that as an indication of the level of interest that people have in collaborative research. And in addition to that, I think we have some concern about the low success rate of the last round of the MIRA applications. And so that really prompted us to want to try to bring you some feedback from the review meetings last time where these applications were reviewed. Hopefully this will help you with a resubmission. As you know, this is the applications will be due in October. The deadline is October, and so we hope that a lot of people who didn't quite make it the first round will resubmit and try again for the next offering. Let me give you a few facts before we begin. There were 42 MIRA applications submitted in the last round, and all of them were received a full review. That means we didn't do any kind of a triage process for the MIRAs. They all got reviewed, and that means that each project and each core was reviewed by 3 reviewers, and that formed the basis of a score for the MIRAs going forward, and then the chair of each one of the review panels decides which ones will go forward for discussion based on those scores. So the applications with the higher scores go to full discussion for the review panels. And actually, over half of the applications were moved forward for discussion. 23, I think, of the 42 applications went forward for discussion at the meeting as well. Unfortunately, only 2 out of those 42 were actually funded. which is less than a 5% success rate, which is extremely low for any of our mechanisms. And I think the last round, the previous round under the other administration of CPRIT, the success rate in the last round was about 18%. So it was much, much higher in the past than it is now. I should just tell you, if you want to see what the successful MIRAs looked like, they are posted on CPRIT's website. So you can go in and look up the 2 latest MIRAs. There's an abstract of, an abstract of the work that's posted on CPRIT's website. If you want to take a look at that, might be helpful for you. So the big question is, what's changed, and why was the success rate so low in the last round? Well, there are a number of things that have changed. One is that the reviewers have changed. Some of the reviewers have changed, and I think that we have probably 60 or 70% of the reviewers are new to the panels compared to the last round of MIRAs. But I don't think that that's really the major issue, because people who were reviewing for CPRIT before and who had reviewed MIRAs before said that there was quite a difference in the level of quality and intent and collaborativeness of the ones that were submitted in the last round. So I don't think that it was that the change in reviewers had a significant impact. I think there are other issues that are more compelling. One of those issues is that, of course, we have tighter funding now than we did a few years ago, 5 years ago, when the last MIRAs came out. And that, of course, makes the reviewers very, very critical. The tighter the money in the outside world, the more critical reviewers are of awarding large grants. And there were a number of comments during the review meetings about, is this program really worth $10 million of the taxpayers' money? And so people looked very hard at the large amount of money associated with these grants, and they were very critical and said these have to be really high quality for us to want to have you invest that amount of money in the grants. So I think that was a major issue, driven partly by external circumstances of having grant money so tight in the outside world. We also, in the last round, I think, had a shorter timeline for application. I don't really think that we gave people enough warning and enough time to, thoroughly prepare an application. As you all by now know, it takes an awful lot of effort to put together a program project or a MIRA, and you really have to have a lot of work done ahead of time before the application is ready to go. And so I think that we've tried this time to give a much longer lead time for people to put programs together and to let people know that it was coming. Now, one other issue is that because of CPRIT's new rules, we are not able to give a lot of help and advice to people who are putting together MIRAs. In fact, once the process starts, we cannot give advice or comment on a specific project. So we can't, you can't ask us, should we leave this project in? Should it come out? We can't give you that kind of guidance on individual projects and programs. And I don't think that was true in the past. I think there was more help from the CPRIT side for people who were preparing these applications, and that has unfortunately had to go away. We have also in the last MIRA round made some technical changes to the application. Again, we had rule changes that dictated that we have to have all of the applications submitted electronically and all the pieces have to be done electronically. And so there were some things that we changed that I think actually disadvantaged some of the applications. And again, we've tried to correct that in the new offering. We've made a few changes, and Michael's going to go over those with you in some detail. But really the major criticism, and this criticism was made in every panel that reviewed MIRAs, that these programs looked more like a collection of individual R01s than a real program. And so I think that's the really important thing that we have to look at, is to make sure that the MIRA has more value than just the sum of individual projects and cores. So I want to read from you. We poll the reviewers after every session, after every round of grant reviews, and we ask for their comments. And we ask specifically about comments on the MIRAs because of the low success rate. And I want to read you one of the comments that I think is very telling from one of the reviewers. And he or she said, "In the MIRAs we recently reviewed, the research projects were mostly individual R01s on related topics, and each project took similar overlapping approaches: molecular biology, mouse genetics, high-throughput genomics, and so on. Because it's impossible to write such an R01 modeled proposal in 5 pages, the projects all came across as having major deficiencies. However, if each project presents a unique expertise to address a shared question, then 5 pages should be enough." We have actually increased the page limit, and we've done some other things, again, that Michael will tell you about. But I think that really summarizes the major criticism of the grants. Can we have the slide up on the MIRA Purpose? What do I do? How do I do that? I don't want to push the wrong button. It may go away. Thank you.
That one.
Okay. This is what's stated in the... Oh, no. That's not that. It's the wrong slide, Michael. Yeah. What's stated in the application is that the purpose of the MIRA is to support integrated programs that are collaborative and cross-disciplinary among multiple institutions or multiple investigators within an institution. They're supposed to hopefully address CPRIT's program priorities, which I'll show you in a moment. And they can be laboratory research, translational studies, clinical studies, and population-based investigations. They can also include clinical trials. We actually have had very few proposals to CPRIT that involve clinical trials. We would actually like to see more. And the programs are supposed to have a synergistic approach to solve a problem that can't be addressed by a single investigator. And this is for, hopefully testing new ideas and exploring new areas and so on. So I think the really important point is that we must explain how the program is more valuable than just the sum of its part. What is the value added of having a program rather than having individual R01s? The other point is that you must demonstrate how synergy and interactions and integration is going to take place. What's the plan for making sure that things are integrated? How is that going to work? And again, it's not really enough to say, well, we're all going to meet together once a week. That doesn't really cover it, and I think that's actually what most people did. So some thought has to be given to how the various projects are integrated with each other and how they support each other in answering a specific question. And one other point is that we need to allocate sufficient effort to the programs. We've had some Co-PIs and PIs who really, the committee said, well, this isn't really enough effort to run a program, or this isn't really, 2% is not enough effort for a Co-PI to run a project or a core. So be mindful of what you put down for effort, because the reviewers do look at that, and if they think it's not sufficient effort, that's a negative. Now for the CPRIT priorities, just to review those, they're very broad. our reviewers do look at these. They do consider these when they are making the cutoff for who gets funded. But it includes investigator-initiated research, basic science, any kind of cancer-related research. But the areas of emphasis are prevention and early detection, the rare and intractable cancers, and especially childhood cancers, which is of great interest to our population. Cancers that are of importance in Texas, and those would be things like liver cancer, cervical cancer, colon cancer, and lung cancer are really the big four for Texas. And then we have a great interest in computational biology and analytical methods, and are just reviewing a set of grants on that topic at the moment. So those are the priorities for CPRIT, and I want to now turn it over to Michael to walk you through the changes that we've had in the application, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Let me try to figure out how to do it. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Brown. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Research at CPRIT. I would also like to thank the MD Anderson and CPRIT teams, especially the IT folks that help us get this together. It's been about a month-long process of getting it up and going, and I really do appreciate everything that everyone has done. I'm not going to go over and read every single section of the RFA. I will hit some of the highlights, talk about some of the changes, and then, like Margaret said, when we open it up for questions, feel free to ask about any of the sections that you would like. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is that the CPRIT application system has opened. It opened yesterday, so you can start filling out your applications. The instructions are also posted yesterday as well. The deadline for submitting applications is October 13th, and those are due at 3 o'clock. Sorry. So first off, I'm going to talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements for funding. Once again, it must be a Texas-based nonprofit research organization or institution. That really hasn't changed. The applicant institution must submit the application for the overall project and be directed by a PI from the applicant institution. This is a change from the way that we had done it in the past, where there were individual grants that were awarded. Now it's just one grant, and if you have internal projects, they all are submitted by the same institution. If you have external participants, those must be done as a subcontractor or sub-award. There is a new dollar amount this time, as Margaret might have mentioned. The maximum is $7.5 million over a 5-year period of time. Also, resubmissions of applications that were not funded in the last round are permitted. I got a question earlier about the resubmission summary and it being only 1 page long. We've talked to our IT people about that, and we're going to try to get that expanded, and that will be listed in the RFA as an update. I feel sure that we'll be able to do that, but since it did open yesterday, it may take a few days to get updated. Renewals are not permitted. This goes with the way that the applications are submitted. Since it is being submitted as one application with an overall fiscal agent, it's different than the way it was done in the past. So renewals can be discussed. You can talk about a program that might be ending in your application as being a quote-unquote renewal, but actual renewals themselves are not permitted through this. Again, with the discussion of the synergistic approach, the overall program must be greater than the sum of its parts. As Dr. Kripke said, we heard that every single panel over and over and over. This would be great if they all work together. So please keep in mind that synergy is a very, very important part of this project. The overall project must be led by one PI from the submitting institution, and the individual projects and cores must be directed by a single lead investigator, and those would all be Co-PIs, with the exception of the PI having to direct the administrative core and another core or project, but I will talk about that in just a minute. The investigators are expected to commit a significant time and effort to the project. We did hear that over and over again, and it really is important that dedication to the project be evident. The abstract and layperson summaries should capture the reader's attention. That's another thing that we heard over and over during peer review. I want them to tell me what they're doing. Tell us what your goals are. Tell us what your objectives are. Tell us what you plan to accomplish. We all understand that cancer is really bad, but you need to tell us what you're going to do. Sorry. One of the things that's changed this time, and I'll get to it more when I talk about the cores and the projects, but a detailed budget and justification for the program as a whole is required, and it really should be reasonable and necessary. You should talk about things that you actually need to accomplish the goals and objectives of the project. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the research projects themselves, the requirements and the plans, and there are some changes here in the applications. This is mainly to help us and the reviewers know a little bit more about what you're doing. The minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5 projects has not changed. As I said earlier, the projects must be directed by the lead PI or a co-PI. A PI or a co-PI may only lead one project, and again, ensure appropriate effort. Something that's new this time is individual project abstracts were required for each project. That should let us know exactly what that individual project is going to be doing. And the project plan, which is been changed just a little bit. Initially, the project plans were only 5 pages long. That's increased now to 20 pages. They must discuss the background, the strategy, the synergy, also include a bio sketch of the leads, a list of the publications, and then something that is new here is a budget and justification for the individual project. While everything will be rolled up into one, this budget itself will be part of the overall 20-page upload. And it should let us really know and let the reviewers know exactly what you're going to be using the money for that project. They had a very difficult time in the reviews trying to figure out, well, where does this project fit into this $10 million budget? So it's really important that you are, clear and concise about what you're going to be using the funding for the individual projects. Moving on to the core resources. There's a minimum of an administrative core and a maximum of 3 technical cores. That means 4 in all. So you can have an administrative core, which must be led by the lead PI, and then you can have 3 of those technical cores. Again, a PI or co-PI may only lead 1 core and ensure appropriate effort. Again, here there is a core resource abstract that's required for each core. And again, you must submit the core research plan, background, support strategy, synergy, and then again, bio sketches, the publications, and then the budget. A core resource plan is not required for the administrative core. That's a question that I've gotten quite often, and there's a section in the application that requires an administrative plan that's sufficient to cover what you're going to do. So again, there's not a core resource plan that's required for this administrative core. A little bit about the PIs, co-PIs, associate PIs, assistant PIs, general PIs, or collaborators. I've gotten lots and lots of questions about, well, what can we call this person because they're not a PI, they're not a co-PI, they're not associate PI. Again, there's only 1 PI, and that's one of the applications that we got last time had 3 PIs listed in it, and then a series of co-PIs that would direct the individual projects and cores. 1 PI for the overall grant, 1 co-PI for each project and each core. These PIs and co-PIs must have doctoral degrees. They must reside in the state of Texas for the duration of the project. The overall PI must lead the administrative core and a project or core. A PI may submit only 1 application, but may serve as a co-PI in another. This question and the next question, or the next statement, co-PIs may serve in more than 1 MIRA application, is probably the single most received question that I've gotten. And yes, you can have a PI that is an overall PI for a MIRA program. That PI may serve in another application as a co-PI. Co-PIs may serve in multiple applications, but it's not really encouraged. And again, you need to make sure that that PI or that co-PI has appropriate and an effective amount of time and effort to fully dedicate attention to the project. The overall PI should commit at least 20% effort, and co-PIs should submit 10% effort. This does not mean that the PI should spend 20% as the administrative core and then another 10% as the PI or co-PI of another core or project. The overall PI, just 20%. And, there are no hard and fast rules here. The RFA does say should, but again, the reviewers were really, really concerned with the effort that the PI and co-PI were putting in. The last thing I'm going to talk about here are the collaborators. Collaborators are permitted and they are encouraged. Anyone that's going to receive funding must reside in the state of Texas if they're going to be a collaborator. You can have contracted services that can be outside of the state of Texas, but that should not be an attempt to kind of skirt the policies of a co-PI or a PI. So while they are permitted and they are encouraged, you really should make sure that only the funds go to individuals in the state of Texas. And also, one of the other things is no equipment can leave the state of Texas. So I know that was quick, and kind of hit some of the highlights. We really came today to get your questions and to get the questions from the people that are watching this over the internet. There is, for the people that are watching it over the internet, an email address that I will be sitting over there answering questions from. It's myra@cprit.state.tx.us. With that, we'll open up questions, open up the audience, and please feel free to ask us anything. We're here until 3 o'clock. So thank you. Appreciate it. First question. We've got mics on either side. Unless you're really loud. Yes, sir. Yeah, we need you to use the mics, guys, so that we can share our mics. I'm kind of loud. We need you to use the mic so that the people that are watching via the internet can hear your questions and get the same answers.
Okay, I have a loud voice, so I try to control it. So, Mike, I have asked you this question before, but there are 3 areas that we want to make sure. Number 1 is for resubmission. One of the key elements is, are these resubmissions going to go to the same panel or some members of the previous panel? How is that going to work? That's question number 1.
Okay, let us answer one at a time. So do you want to address that?
Yeah, most likely it will go back to the same panel. The assignments of the applications are made by the director, which would be me or my successor. So we will be sending those out, and it is fairly likely, I think, that it would go to the same panel because of the expertise of the particular reviewers.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. The second question has to do with vertebrate animals and justification. Right now you have 5 pages for overall, but when you look at individual projects, you are going to have animal use there. So the person that is going to review the budget will have to see the number of animals that we are going to put in the budget in the individual projects, and then go back to the 5 pages and see so the numbers of mice that are going to be used match the amount that is requested for the budget. So should we have the vertebrate animal component, a shorter version in the individual projects as well?
How's it set up?
It's not set up like that in the application system. What I would recommend you do is in the actual research plan, since it has been expanded from 5 pages to 20 pages, to discuss it in there. I think that would be the best place to do it. Because of the way that we set up the RFA, and because of the way the application was set up, and because it was quite different even than it was the last time that we had you all submit applications, there was not a section for that. So I would recommend that, you put it, the full information in the 5 pages, but then also mention it in the research plan.
Okay, and my last question has to do with the response to the resubmission. And I think that you addressed it already, that you are going to modify that.
We are.
That is going to be, you have one for the overall thing, but are we going to have the chance of having a one-pager in each of the projects, or?
It will be one resubmission section. So the resubmission summary will be expanded from 1 page, and let me finish reading this email that discusses that, because I just got an answer. We will probably expand it to 5 pages, so that you'll be able to. So you'll be able to address.
That would be great.
Yes. So from 1 page to 5 pages, which will allow you to address, each of the individual
And of course, that will be
projects.
available for all the reviewers.
Yes,
for the different
absolutely.
projects.
It will be available for all the reviewers.
Okay, thank you both very much.
Certainly.
I was a little late, so you may have mentioned this at the outset. How many MIRAs are you expecting to fund this cycle?
We don't make any kind of an estimate of what gets funded. It depends on how many actually pass peer review. I mean, last time around, we would have funded more had we had more that were, that had passed review and been recommended. So we don't actually have a specific number that we're going to fund. It depends on how many come in and how many actually make it through peer review.
So is there a budget allocation that's specifically for MIRAs that they can go up to a maximum amount, or is it an open-ended thing?
No, it's actually open-ended.
Maybe I ask for a previous question, follow-up. Since you said you don't tell us how many MIRA award, but the importance is that depends on how many, what kind, score you cut off. Mm-hmm. Because if you cut off 40, probably fund many. If you cut off 2, probably only fund 1. Right. So what kind of cutoff score currently set up?
The cutoff score is actually determined by the individual study section. When they look at all of the scores, they decide what should be the cutoff point that they are going to recommend going forward. And then the chairs of each one of those committees meets and looks at all of the scores across all of the panels and makes another determination about what should be the cutoff. Typically, it runs around, is it a 3?
It is around 3, and I was,
3.2,
I think it's 3.2
3.4.
this last time around. I was
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah, that's what it's been generally. And I think relative to the previous question also, I would expect that we would see probably, I mean, our success rate for all of our other grant mechanisms runs between 10 and 15%. And so I would expect, that's what I would expect the MIRAs to come in at also. But,
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Just a couple of questions regarding the effort. Is 20% for the lead PI enough to serve as core director as well as co-PI?
Yes, the 20% is
Total.
with the 20% total is for the overall PI to lead the administrative core and then another core or project.
And is it the same for the co-PI, 10% enough to be co-PI as well as co-director?
Well, a co-PI, there has to be a co-PI for each core and for
No,
each.
for the project, co-PI for the project who's serving also as co-director.
There isn't a co-director.
There's, right.
There's not a
co-director?
No co-director.
No, core
There's,
A.
no,
core
there's no
direct-
core
core
director.
director.
The core director would be the co-PI for that core.
No, a core PI who wants to serve as core A co-director. Co-PI for a project, not for a core.
Ah, okay.
Co-PI for a project would like to serve as core A co-director. Is 10% enough?
That would be the minimum. I think that it would be, that's the minimum that you would have to have is 10%. But I think if it's less than 10% on a project or less than 10% on a core, the reviewers would look at that pretty carefully. Yeah.
And the last question regarding the letter of support. You have dedicated or committed just 4 pages for the letter of support. How could that be? In case you have more,
What is
a lot
the
of.
support? 4 pages?
The letters of collaborators and
Yeah.
letters of
Collaborations or
is it a
support
four-
or-
It is at
4
4 pages. It is.
Yep, 4 pages. That's
4
what-
pages.
Yes.
That's right. You don't think that's enough?
Is it enough?
I'm asking you.
Yeah, because each collaborator will have a letter of.
Yeah.
So in case you have more than 4 collaborators slash support. So,
We'll take a look at that.
We will take a look at that.
okay, thank you.
Because that seems reasonable that it would be higher than that. Okay, we have a question from outside. It said the limit for the research proposals, the research or their research project plans is 20 pages. Can the proposal be less than this? Yes.
Oh,
It's
please,
just a-
yes.
yes,
The reviewers
please.
love it when it's less than that.
Can it be done in 8 pages? If you can do it in 8 pages, they would be very happy.
So my question has to do with the reviewers' comments about synergy. And I was wondering how much they took into account that the proposed cores or the co-PIs had actually collaborated together in the past. Is that something that we need to take into account? Because if we're trying to start a new collaboration with somebody and we feel like they would be a good fit, but we haven't had any demonstration in the past that we've been able to work, or we haven't worked together, so there's no track record, how much is this taken into account? And would you discourage people from applying for a CPRIT until after they maybe had started to collaborate with, other scientists that they wanted to work with?
It does count, and people do look at that and to see whether you've collaborated in the past. And if you have, that's a plus. If you have not, then I think you have to be able to convince the reviewers that you're interested in working on the similar things and that you have a good fit of interests and there's complementarity between what you want to do and what the other person wants to do. Yeah, I think you have to work a little bit harder if you don't have a track record in collaboration, yeah.
A couple of questions. One, as an extension of the future, the other question about the letters. If the collaborator is going to be a collaborator on only one project, can the collaborator letter go in the 20 pages of that project?
I don't see why not.
We had not made a provision for that, and one of the things that I had talked to someone about earlier on was to talk about the collaboration in the project plan or the core resource plan, and to kind of line out exactly how that was going to work in lieu of a letter. But like you said, I don't
see why not.
I don't see why you couldn't.
Well,
put
you
it.
couldn't put that in as a page in within the 20
There's
page
just a lot more space than 20
Yeah.
pages than 4.
Right.
Yeah.
The second question we had was, if you're using a fair number of core facilities to do some standard procedures, should there be a core of the cores, or is it better to just not include that? No. Okay.
No, don't go there.
I was asked to ask.
So related to the question on track record of collaboration, review that we got for our MIRA was that all co-PIs had track record of collaboration with the overall PI, but not so much with each other. Is that a limitation in the review process, if that's the case?
Obviously it is, since that was a comment that you got back. But
Are you correcting these reviewers, or are you agreeing with these reviewers?
it's not up to me to do
Okay.
either. The reviewers will do what the reviewers will do. But I think that, again, I'll give the same answer. In the case when you don't have a track record of collaboration between or among the Co-PIs, then it's very important to address that up front and explain how you're going to deal with that. So I think ignoring it is not going to be productive, but addressing it directly, I think, should suffice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret and Michael, for the very informative talk. And I do have a question regarding reviewers. This MIRA program supports teamwork. So the one we submitted, actually, it's a team from basic science all the way to clinical trial. But when we had a meeting for resubmission, my clinical trial Co-PI is not willing to resubmit because the whole score, the score of that particular part was the one dragged down the whole MIRA team score. But the major criticism was the clinical trial design, and the reviewers were asking the clinical trial leader to have a control arm patients without any chemo treatment, which by any people in the field know that's not ethical.
Right.
So my question is, in this case, can we recruit reviewer who knows what they're talking about?
We have them, they're just in the other panel, I'm afraid. Yes, we will take a good look at that, because I think that it is possible for us to have a project reviewed by a different panel, or to recruit some reviewers from different panels to fill in needed expertise if the MIRA goes to a particular panel. So we'll take a look at that and make sure that, particularly for the clinical things, that we have that covered.
Thank you.
I have a question from the outside. What are the regulations regarding collaborating with clinical companies to achieve specific objectives, i.e., can money go to these companies? No, they cannot go to these companies as a collaborator. If they are providing some sort of contracted service for you, then yes. If they are being a consultant, then yes. But as a part of the MIRA, as a collaborator or an institution that would be one of the projects or cores, that's not permissible.
I have two questions. First question is still about the support letters. I don't think that even if you increase it to 10 pages, it won't be enough, because, for example, if you have 3 institutional support letters, and which runs to, let's say, 2 institutional support letters, about 4 pages total, and then another 4 collaborators, about 2 more pages, you're already about 10 pages. So that, I'm not sure if that's something that when you're voting or deciding, maybe there should not be any limit for those, because they're not going to really cut into any of the science sections. Okay. And that allows people to kind of get more detailed letters, which was one of the criticisms by the review committee at some point. Okay. The second question is that when we are mentioning collaborators in each of these, individual projects, now, what details are you, how much detail can we go in like this thing without cutting into it? And again, the letters of biosketches, for example, in the individual projects. I'm presuming that we need to have the main PI, co-PI, and then few, maybe one other support personnel, and then rest can be summarized. Is that reasonable?
The PI and co-PI, those biosketches will go into the core resource plan and into the project plan. For other institutional personnel that are going to be supporting players in this, You can put as many as long as they're limited to 2 pages, bio sketches as you need.
Well, that's the question. Like, if there are too many of the bio sketches, you end up with basically same 5 pages that was last year for the main narrative, because your 20 pages includes all of that. Right, bio sketches, and then, I'm trying to see how to minimize or maximize the number of pages to write the science part, then include all these supporting things.
Well, there's an individual section for bio sketches that would not take away from the science of the application. So in that bio sketch section, you're not limited to the number of bio sketches that you upload there. They just are limited to 2 pages apiece. So
That's right. So does that mean that the 20 pages?
That's not included in the 20 pages.
Okay.
That's a completely different section of the application on its own.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Yes. The other question is that, same, it goes with the, support letters, because we have an external advisory board, which is comprised of 3 to 5 people. Again, if they give 2 pages letters, I kind of hope that would be taken into consideration and remove any page limit on support letters, because that's not really going to hurt anything.
I think that we could, get rid of the page limits there as far as the number of letters that you can submit, but we may limit the number of pages that a letter can be.
Yes, that makes sense, yes.
Because we don't want a, 400-page application of letters.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I have a question that was motivated by the question about the clinical trials. And I know that the MIRAs, you want to have more clinical interaction that's going on. And I have a Bridging the Gap that took basic science and put it into the clinic, and it was successful. And now it warrants multi-investigator. And so I was really intrigued when I read the directions, because it said, we'll consider all sorts of sizes of proposals. And so I was hopeful coming here to hear that, because I find it very hard to try to fit a translation, basic science to clinical, into a program project type grant, because the different projects are of different sizes. They're not equally weighted. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, is this the appropriate program for a translational research? Because it really doesn't fit into, I find it hard to put it into the PO1 mechanism. And it just seems, because the criticism will always be, that the clinical, you got to have the best clinical researchers to do this, but they're very different than basic science research. And I wondered some comment on that, because it may have been similar to...
It's really a similar comment. You may be correct that this is not a very good mechanism for doing the whole spectrum of translational research. I don't know, and I don't think there's another one that we have currently that really does that.
But I wondered if there would be, because you could format it that way, but the review criteria would be somewhat different.
Right. I think we would have to construct a different RFA, a different mechanism to support translational research, and have it as a separate mechanism.
Yeah, because you really need to have multi-investigators for translational research, but yet this doesn't quite fit into it.
Yeah, I understand. But I think we would have to write a different RFA. I'm not advising you not to do this. You should, keep trying, because right at the moment we don't have a different RFA. Okay? Yeah.
Just for clarification, the 5-page limit for addressing prior critiques is for the entire MIRA, or is for each components of the MIRA?
The entire MIRA.
So some of the critiques are detailed or long, and you feel like you're not entertaining the reviewers if you don't address them, and 5-page might be limited. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. There was a question from the outside. Is there an absolute need to include a clinical trial or a clinical study as part of a MIRA? No.
A question related to someone else's question before. Traditionally, in a multi-PI grant, there is recommended to have an external advisory board, but I actually was looking through the application and I didn't see that one was needed for this.
It's not required.
Sorry, but all of this brought to going back. Michael, you mentioned that for the responses to critique, we are going to have now 5 pages.
We're going to look at that.
You are going to look at that.
We're going to
okay.
look at it. We're going to look and see exactly what the language is. You need to be very careful in reading the RFA to see exactly what the requirements are asking you there. And you've got several other sections of the application that have a large number of pages that you can discuss. The resubmission summary is really an overarching, a high-level discussion of what the issues were with the application and respond to the reviewer's comments in a clear, concise manner, and then go into using the research plans, the 20 pages for the core plans and the resource plans to address, the key issues and also,
I understood from you, just when I asked this first, that this will be expanded number of pages to 5, and that this will be available for everyone and all the projects. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure that that's the case. Then, in terms of the external advisory board, we were asked to have an external advisory board, okay, by the CPRIT panel. So
I don't recall that that's in an RFA.
It's not in the RFA, that's why I'm asking. So, and that's what the question previously. So the reviewers suggested that we must have an external advisory board.
Oh, the reviewers suggested that.
The
Okay.
reviewers
Okay.
suggested that
Okay.
we needed to have an external advisory board.
Okay.
So if that's the case, we should do it. We already got the people, though.
Yeah, it's not required. If they thought it was a good idea, it certainly isn't going to hurt you to have one.
No,
Right,
okay,
right,
okay,
right.
okay, that's it.
well, you just said you had the people, so.
Okay, so that will be, if I do that, of course, again, we need the letters. So we ask a letter from each one of them. So the 2 institutions that are working together. So typically, a good letter from an institution is a couple of pages each.
Yeah.
So that's 4 and 3 from each, 1 from each of the reviewers. So that's what I'm looking at. So that will exceed by 2 pages your.
Okay, okay.
So I hope that that's not a problem, though.
We'll look at the page issue.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. Just clarification.
thank you.
Hi, I have a couple of questions. Can you clarify that the 20-page project research plan also includes budget as well as budget justification?
It does, but it's not, it's a budget for that individual project.
only.
And we're not expecting it to be to the level of the overall budget for the entire MIRA program. It does need to, it needs to let the reviewers, the reason that we included that in the project plan is because several of the reviewers weren't clear by the text of the project plan where the money was going. And so it's really to help them give better reviews, to provide better reviews.
Also, the instruction noted that NIH format biosketch can be used this time around.
Absolutely. We're not really sure where that sample in cars came from.
But that's still limited to 2
NIH
pages.
biosketch, yes, it is 2 pages, but yes, NIH biosketch is perfect.
So just to follow up on that question about the 20 pages, if you look at the way it's written in the instructions, the 20 pages has the research plan, synergy, budget justification, literature cited, biosketches. They're all listed under that 20 pages. So in a typical NIH grant, literature cited doesn't count towards your page limit. Will it count in this? So are all those going to have to fit in those 20 pages?
Yes.
So including the biographical sketches for each project.
Right, but the biographical sketches that are included in the project plan or a core resource plan are only for the lead, only for the PI, overall PI, or for the core
Only
project
the lead PI has to be- okay, but
And so there's a whole other section for bio sketches where everyone else in the project should be listed.
But you do have to put your bio sketch in your project
Yes.
in that 20 pages.
A
Okay,
two-page
thank
bio sketch.
Anything else?
I have a question that you need to read. We have a question from the outside. I'm going to let Margaret read it and answer it.
Okay, the question is, as for the synergy of the MIRA, at what level should projects be integrated? For example, on a broad theme, novel ovarian cancer therapies, targeting autophagy, targeting tumor vascularity, et cetera, or on a specific theme, autophagy and ovarian cancer, all projects working to understand different aspects of the autophagic process. I think what the reviewers are really looking for, and what was expressed in the comment that I read, is that they want a question, a single question, with different approaches to address a question. So that would make it, it would be a question that can't really be answered by one approach, but could use multiple approaches. So I don't think this is quite right. I think that it's the question. You have to define what is the question and then have different projects addressing aspects of the same question. So I think the first example of just therapy for ovarian cancer is not appropriate. That's what they didn't like about most of the projects last time around. Again, I would direct you to looking at the 2 MIRAs that were funded in the last round, because there's one on liver cancer that really exemplifies that kind of an issue of having a specific question and then looking at different approaches to addressing the question and filling the gaps in the question. So that might help you have the idea of what they're looking at in terms of synergy. Anything else? That's it? In our extended audience, any other questions? I think we're about ready to wrap up here.
Going once?
Going once, going twice. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you all very much for coming.